So, I'm here to talk to you about the Google Plus project and the +1 button. I assume you've all heard about the Google Plus project and the +1 button. Otherwise, this is going to be a very long talk. So, this is me. I'm Ade Oshineye. I'm a developer advocate on the Google Plus project. If you were here last year, you may remember me as I talked about Buzz, which is going away. That's me on Twitter. The first URL is me on Google Plus. You click on that, it'll redirect to my profile. So, a very long time ago, I spent 4.5 years of my life writing a book for O'Reilly, which is that. And this is what we're going to cover. We're basically going to cover what is the Google Plus project, why is it a project, why do you care? We're going to talk about the +1 button and how you can use it, and in terms of using it for search, using it as a publisher, using it to basically enhance and affect the way search and advertising works for you on the web. And then finally, we're going to talk about the authorship initiative, which, well, you'll see later on, it actually has some pretty big impact on the way search works. So, we talk about Google Plus as a project, and we talk about upgrading Google. And people often aren't very clear what we mean when we say this. What we mean is that the point of Google Plus is not to build yet another social network. The point of it is to look at everything Google is already doing and say, could we enhance, improve, upgrade this if we added social, if we added identity, if we brought people into it? So the reason we call Google Plus a project is that the goal is to upgrade the whole of Google, not just build yet another social network. So I assume you've all seen the features. Actually, who here is using Google Plus? Okay, great. So I'm going to go through this fairly quickly in case you haven't seen these. So I assume you've all seen circles. By the way, if you have questions, feel free to just shout them out. I'll repeat them and answer them as we go along. So circles, as you know, it's all about controlling what you share and who you share it with. So if you saw the keynote earlier, Brad talked about how they let you shout as well as whisper. The idea is that if I want to talk about football, I'm quite happy to tell everybody I like football. However, if I want to talk about shopping or fashion, I'm not so sure I want everybody knowing about that. I'm going to keep that quiet. If I want to have a conversation with a few celebrities, I'm not sure I want everybody knowing about that. I want to keep that quiet. So as a celebrity, you want to be able to do big, loud things and small, quiet things. As a normal person, you want to be able to do big, loud things and small, quiet things as well. So circles aren't purely about privacy, they're about control. You've seen Hangouts. You may have seen me in the keynote this morning when we were showing off Hangouts and the applications you can build with those. So the point about Hangouts is that it's not just video chat. The point of Hangouts is that it's really lightweight and casual. You can join a Hangout on your phone or your tablet, or your laptop, and you can join it again and again with multiple different accounts. So this is a Hangout we did, I think last week, actually. And we just fired them up because it's so easy. And of course, we have a really great mobile experience. So the thing about mobile that's really important is that when people think about mobile, they don't usually think about this. They always think about some fancy smartphone. When we think about mobile, we look at what people actually do with their mobile phones, and we say, what problems exist here that we can actually solve? So this is a phone I bought for my mother. Can anybody guess why I bought this phone for my mother rather than the latest smartphone? It's simple, it's cheap, the battery life is incredible. Because I started with the problem she had, and then I found a phone that solved that problem. She actually ended up buying another phone that's simple and cheap as well, but has a torch built into it. Because that's what she wanted. Which makes no sense to me, but that's what she wanted. So when we talk about Google+, we're trying to focus on this idea of starting with the problems you have. So when we look at mobile, and we look at what people really do with their mobile phones, actually, can anybody tell me what is the biggest and most valuable application on mobile phones today? Anybody else? SMS. Everybody does SMS, and it makes the carriers a huge amount of money. It's huge. It's the thing most people do most of the time. And the thing about SMS is that it's actually really hard to manage. If you want to have an SMS conversation with multiple people, that becomes really hard. So we built Messenger to solve that problem. If you look at the things people really do with their phones all day, every day, we started with those. So who here sleeps with their phone? Come on. Who here basically has their phone next to them when they go to bed? So this is something that lives with you all day, every day. And then what typically happens, so there's a pop star called Kira Granis, and she uses an iPhone, and she was in Berlin recently, and she lost her iPhone. And she has all these photos on her phone that she hasn't uploaded anywhere, and those are gone. So this happens quite often. So we looked at how people are using their phone, and we said, well, what if there's a thing that ran in the background and instantly uploaded every photo to a private album? And that's how instant upload came about. It's the same reason why you can join a Hangout from video, because if you start with a problem the user has, you can build relatively simple things that have a big impact on people's lives. So when we talk about putting people first, putting people at the center of things, it's not just, hey, this is social. It's actually, what if you look at people's real lives and you design things from there? So how does this connect to the +1 button? Well, classic problem we often see. Somebody searches for something, and they get a whole bunch of results, and they don't know what can they trust. What is the recommended result? So they have our ranking, but they don't really know Google as a person. But the recommendations from people you know matter a lot. So in this one, you can see that your friends, Brian Downey and Jason Robinson, they're not my friends, they're people we use for this example. They basically have +1 that search result, and you can +1 it too. And you can see the name of the person who +1 this. So as you can tell, Timothy Jordan made this screenshot. So the point when we launched the +1 button is that you can only +1 in search results. And people said, those people at Google, don't they know that when you click on a search result, you don't know if it's good or not? It's only when you get to the page that you know. So we said, well, actually, that's true. People don't know in advance. So first of all, they have to go to the page, and then we ask the publishers to put a button on the page so that you look in the search results, you go through, you read it, you think, this is a good article, this is cool, this is something I want to endorse, this is something I want to share with my friends. And then you can +1 it. We show you who else is +1 it, because you want to see who else likes this before you do something. And of course, the +1 is always a public gesture. That's really important, because we think it's important to set expectations before you start using products. So once you've +1'd, either in search or with the Chrome extension I'll talk about later, or by doing it on the publisher's page, we're going to show your face, your name, next to that result to your friends, the people in your graph. So you can see that that's a +1 that comes from just somebody +1 in search. You can +1 in search ads. You can +1 in display ads as well. You can +1 on the publisher side as well. And we recently added a facility to actually share as well. So you can basically not just +1 to affect search results, you can +1 as a social gesture that goes to the stream and lets your friends know. And of course, sometimes you want to you want to say something. Now, you might want to say, that was awesome. Or you might want to say, actually, they've done a lot of episodes of Harry Potter. I'm glad they're finishing the series. And of course, you might not want to admit that in public because, well, people might not find that acceptable to say you don't like Harry Potter. So you can limit that to a specific circle. So the point here is that you're still getting the same 10 blue links you've always seen in Google Web Search, but now we are showing the social annotations, and the idea is that they're going to affect CTR, because you'll see the 10 results, and then you'll see that your friend +1 something, and it may not be the top result, and you're more likely to click on that one. The other thing, of course, is that as a publisher, when people come to you through search now, because they've had this extra bonus, this extra tip, they are more likely to want your content when they arrive. So the idea is that you're getting not just more traffic, you're getting better traffic, because it's people who actually want your content. And of course, you can always share to the Google Plus stream, where we have 40 million users. So what drove all this? For us, it was starting with the research that 90% of people, they trust recommendations from people they know. The thing is, we have a search engine, and we'd like people to trust that. But as well as people they know, people say that actually, when I'm buying something, when I'm making a commercial decision, I ask my family and friends. And so we have this fundamental problem. So who here knows this camera? So this is the camera I brought today, but that's my second favorite camera. So it's my second favorite camera because the leaks about it started last September, about this awesome new camera from Fuji, and there was very little information you could find online about this thing. And there was just lots of sites with rumors. So where can I buy it? Nobody knows. Is it good? Nobody knows. But there's lots of people speculating. And so when I go to search, this is the ranking. Out of those results, which can I trust? Well, I happen to know that Dan and Anna and Chris are into photography, and they've all +1 that result. So I click through to it, and it's the official Fuji website about that camera. And that's a site that has good information about what the camera can do when it's out and which shop to buy it. I ended up buying a little shop called Discount Camera in San Francisco. Great shop. But the point is, this is something that search historically hasn't done a good job of, but with social, with Google+, we've upgraded the search experience to handle this kind of scenario. The other really awesome thing that this does is it gives you a way to close the loop. So last September, I was obsessed with this camera. Now, I left it at home, I brought the other camera. So this is the classic problem. There's a point in time you are obsessed with something. You have lots of research, you gather lots of information. 6 months, 12 months later, some of your friends are interested. They want your recommendation, and they email you and they say, hey, that camera you were interested in 6 months ago, do you have any recommendations about where to buy it or where to get a good review of it? But that was 6 months ago. I don't care about it anymore. What Google Web Search is doing with the +1 button is taking this point in time when you cared about that thing and bringing it to the person who's searching for it at the time they're searching, so that they are getting a recommendation at the point when they need it. So back in September, I bored everybody I knew with how awesome this camera was. But they didn't care. Now they want to buy it, they search, they see that I +1 this review by TechCrunch. So the other big thing we've realized is that when people share, they're much more likely to share to a small group of people rather than to the world. So here's another example of using the +1 button based on that fact. So this is my old website. It was designed in 1999. It uses HTML tables. So not HTML5, HTML 3.2. And I needed to redesign this because people were laughing at me. My brothers have children that are younger than my website. So how do I redesign it? Well, I want a small group of people who don't mind that I'm going to be posting lots and lots of screenshots of the same website being slowly changed, who are going to give me feedback. So I +1 the site, hit share, and I set up a circle of people who I thought would be interested in this stuff. And I asked them, if you think you're interested in this, say yes, and I'll put you in a special circle, and I'll be sharing stuff that's related and relevant. So the point is, this is another place where the +1 button solves a problem you have. You want to form a community around a topic. So you may recognize those two people. Roman Nurek is an Android developer advocate. He's one of the best designers I know. And that's my friend Damien. He's famous because he uses links for everything. He runs everything in an 80x40 terminal, no matter how big his monitor. So basically, if my site can support both people, I know it's covered the spectrum of humans. So that's what a +1 button can do for you. How do you do it? Well, the easy way, you go to this site, and you basically say, I want a tall button, a medium-wide button. What language do I care about? Do I want the little bubble of people who've +1 it to show? And then we generate the code for you. So the code is actually relatively simple. To render the +1 button, we need you to put some code in your site that will go and fetch the JavaScript for the button from our site. And then after doing that, that code, when it gets invoked, needs to scan your page for a special marker that says this is where the button should go. So we can use those tags, or you can use a div with a special identifier. And what will happen is the page will load, call our JavaScript, and we'll rewrite a little bit of your page to include the +1 button. So as you can see, it's pretty simple. This is the simplest and easiest way of doing it. There are, of course, more sophisticated ways, because one of the classic complaints people say is, wait, if my site renders and as part of it, it calls you, what if Google's down? So we added this asynchronous code snippet. As you can see, it's a little more complicated. You're still putting the marker in your website that says, when the JavaScript loads, go replace this marker with the button. But now, the code that's going to walk to your DOM and change that little element, that's asynchronously loaded. So it effectively means that even if Google is down, your site will not be affected. It also means it will not slow down the rendering and the loading of your site. So here's the simplest possible page you can do with the +1 button. As you can see, we've got the +1 demo title. You've got a link indicating the canonical URL for this. We'll talk about that later. And we load a JavaScript, and we put the button there. Now, there are some scenarios you need to think about. One of the classic things we see are people who have shopping sites or catalogs, where they have the same content at different levels throughout their site. And so their problem is, it's the same content, but there are multiple links pointing to it. There are multiple places that mean the same thing. So what you can do is you can use rel canonical to say, I have all these things. So you can say, I have multiple URLs pointing to the same place, and this is the canonical one. So basically, you don't end up dividing your +1 between all of them. They all become one thing. You can also, of course, do slightly more complicated things when your site has multiple levels. So if you think about what happens if you have a site with a home page and a section page and then an article, that gets a little more complicated. We'll look at that in a moment. But the other thing we think is really important is if my +1 is going to end up in the stream, are people going to click on it? What's going to make them click on it? And typically, that's going to depend on the quality of the snippet. So here's the problem. For this one, you get a snippet saying Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, and it talks about it. What you want as a publisher is you want to be able to control that snippet. So we basically came up with schema.org. Who here knows about schema.org? OK. For everybody else, let's see, earlier this year, we launched schema.org. Well, I say we. It was Google, Microsoft, and Yahoo. Basically, we launched this schema because we felt that search would be better if the web was better structured. Because if we know this is an article or we know this is a recipe, then when you search for recipes, we can show you a page that is a recipe. If you search for books, we can show you a page that is a book. So you end up with better search results, and everybody wins. So we set up an organization that basically is defining a language for describing things on the web. So we support schema.org. We also support Open Graph. So this is our example we used initially, which is recipe search. So I don't cook much. I work at Google. But if you were searching online for recipes, you can use the recipe search we have, and it will show you all the pages that mention that they have the particular ingredients you have in your fridge in that recipe. This is possible because we've got schema.org, which has a way of representing recipes. And of course, you can filter and say, I want only things with turkey in them, or only things with celery. And of course, because we know it's a review, we can know it's going to have ratings in it. So, come back for a minute. So say, we have schema.org support, which this is in order of preference. We'll check for schema.org support, then we'll check for Open Graph, then we'll check for meta tags, and then we'll just try to parse the content of the page ourselves and hope for the best. But let's move on a bit. So here we have an example where there's a snippet, it has a title, it has a description. You want to control those because those will control whether people click through or not when they see it in the stream. And of course, there's the image, I forgot about that. So here's an example of representing that with schema.org. As you can see, it's pretty simple. You have the item scope, it's to say, do you want the whole page to be considered to be the article, or do you want a specific section of it to be an article? So you say the entire thing, the whole page is an article. You say there is an item, which is this one, the test title. The property is name. So if you go back, I showed you that property, name. That's what we're specifying here. And we have description and we have image. So again, you see it's just a set of key value pairs. And by specifying those things in your markup, you get to control what shows up in this snippet and what shows up in the stream, which of course affects whether people click through to your content when they see it in the stream. So, any questions at this stage?
Does OpenGamper work already, or is it just planned? Because I have some trouble with my web page. It's working for but it's not working for my web page.
So the question was, does the Open Graph support work already, or is it just planned? The answer is it works already. Now, Google, Microsoft, and Yahoo would recommend schema.org because it's a documented standard, there's a process for making changes and improvements. But if there are bugs, you can always use the rich snippets tool we have, which will look at a page and tell you what we can successfully extract. So, what are the best practices we have for this? Well, it's got to be a public crawlable URL. So whenever we say this, people aren't quite sure what we mean. So I'm going to give you some examples. It should not be a file that's only available on your local machine. It should not be password protected. It has to be an HTTP or HTTPS URL. So FTP URLs don't work, for instance. It shouldn't be something that's password protected. I think I covered that. It has to be a valid URL. Again, a common mistake people make. It has to be reachable on the open web. So it can't be on your intranet. It can't be running on a local server that's only available on your local machine. This makes testing, unfortunately, a little awkward at times, but it's important to know this in advance. And if you use the rich snippets tool, it can tell you in advance. Okay, so you can have multiple +1s on a single page. So if you look at somebody like Tim Bray's website, you can see he has multiple blog posts on the same page, and he has the +1 button. And what he does is he has a different +1 button on each of those articles, and they use the href property to point to specific articles. Here's an example of doing that with Mashable. And of course, as we said earlier, you can use rel canonical to have multiple +1s on the same page that point to the same thing. So when you're looking at the URL, when our crawler is looking at the URL, we're going to pick based on, do you explicitly set the href? In which case, we'll believe that. If you don't explicitly set the href, we'll look for rel canonical in the page somewhere. And if you don't do that, we'll guess, because we'll assume that the button is on the page you want the +1. Now, one of the questions you're going to ask, or I sense people will ask is, but my page is really dynamic. And we'll talk about that later. So if you try this at the beginning, in March when we first launched this, you may have complained, has these problems, or it's relatively slow. We've made some huge improvements in speed, it's asynchronous, and often I get people and they say, I tried the button, but it causes this problem. And I say, go to the configuration tool, try it again. You'll see that the code is a lot faster. So I talked earlier about how you're going to put the +1 on your site, and you have to think about where you put it on your site. Now, on my personal website, I have it on the home page, and only in the home page, because I only want people to be able to +1 my whole domain. Other people, they have category pages, and they want traffic on those category pages as well. Other people have the home page, category pages, and then the leaf pages, and they want +1s in all of them. So if you're thinking about them +1 in your whole site, you want it near the logo on the homepage, somewhere nice and obvious. Let me show you my website, actually. Or not. Okay, there. That took a while, but this is my website. It's a work in progress, but it shows you how you can use the +1 button. So this is my website, and right here I have the +1 button. Hey, and 42 people have +1 this, and I have this set up in a way that indicates you're +1 in the whole website. Other people, so let me show you Tim Bray. Hey, you can see I shared this at some point in time in the past. But when you look at Tim Bray, you can see that he has +1s for each of the individual articles. So I can +1 this one, and then +1 this one, and +1 this one. And they are each different +1s. So the point I'm making is that there's nuance in the +1 button. So that's all well and good, but can't you do more with this? Can't you do more sophisticated stuff? Because if you've seen some of the other presentations that talked about HTML5 and the power of JavaScript, there's lots of really cool stuff being done. I mean, if you've seen some of the Chrome demos, you know that this is not your father's web. There's more that you could do. So with the +1 button, we provided with a JavaScript callback, so that when you use the +1s, you get a notification with the URL that's been +1'd, and then you can do anything you want with that. So the code for that is pretty simple, really, because all you are doing is saying, when they call that, the callback, and the function is called +1 callback. You plug that in, and then it will invoke that function for you. And this can do anything you want. You could build a photo gallery where whenever somebody +1 something, you hide it and you show them the next photo. Or some publishers, they don't use Google Analytics, and they asked, how do I plug the +1 button to my analytics? And we say, use the callback. Somebody +1s, it pokes a function, your function uses your existing analytics tool. So there's a lot of power in the fact that we have this callback function. So let's show you some examples of what you can do with the APIs we're building for the +1 button. So who here is using the Chrome extension we've built for the +1 button? Okay, so all the Googlers. So what we have is a Chrome extension that lets you +1 anything on the web, assuming it's a public and crawlable URL. So that means that even if the publisher hasn't put the +1 button, you can still endorse it to your friends. Our Chrome extension currently doesn't do sharing, but as we say, stay tuned. So the +1 button extension we have, you can tell the official one quite simply because it has a verified author. And when you search for it, and you search for the phrase Google +1 button, you see that other people have built +1 buttons because that's what the demand for the product has been like. You can tell the one that's ours because the email address attached is extension@chrome.org. So we built a Chrome extension that lets you +1 things all over the web. However, some of us in London thought, wouldn't it be nice to do something more with this? And I have a ton of photos from conferences. You may have seen that I was taking photos earlier. And for those of you who weren't, you get to be in another one. That'll go up on Plus, probably later this week. So I have a lot of photos, and I'd like people to see them. So what we did was we built a Chrome extension available in the web store at G+ tab. And let me show you what that looks like. So every time I do a new tab, it picks an image randomly for a set. It's currently on Flickr because we haven't launched our photo APIs yet. And it shows you this nice photo. And you think, oh, that's nice. And you say, well, what happens if I open another one? Yeah, another one. And you think, actually, you know what? I really like this one. Because it inspire, change, discover, imagine, create. And you think, I want to +1 that. I want to recommend that to people across the web. So what we've built is the +1 button into the extension. Now, you remember earlier I talked about how you can only +1 things that have public crawlable URLs. This is a Chrome extension in a new tab. What's the URL? So, sorry? Correct. So the person there guessed it's the Flickr page for it. And so what happens is, so if you watch this, see the Chrome extension for the +1 button? So I +1 this. I can share it if I wanted to. But let's say I click to take you to the Flickr page. Watch this. When the page loads, the extension should, in a few seconds, notice that I've already +1 that and turn blue, depending on the speed of our network. Soon, hopefully, maybe. We could just sort of walk around here and talk about Prague while we wait for that to load. OK, it's not going to work. We always have the option, of course, of just +1 it ourselves. Hey, 2 people have +1 this. So the point here is that you can do more with the +1 button than just stick it on your web page. You can start to use it to provide sharing facilities within your existing web apps, no matter how dynamic they are. Now, of course, you're probably thinking, well, how do I do really cool dynamic things with a +1 button? What if I'm using HTML5 history and so my web pages are being loaded in dynamically? So this is Think Quarterly. Anybody here know Think Quarterly? OK, one guy. So Think Quarterly is a nice little magazine by Google. It started in the London office, which is why I like it so much. It's now run out of New York, and I'm hoping they'll invite me there one day. So they have this really nice, beautiful HTML5 website, but as you scroll down the left-hand side, they load in new articles. So as you can see, if you look at the blue thing, as you move down, they load in new articles. And what they do is each of them has a +1 button dynamically inserted into it. So that they load a new div in for each thing, and they put a +1 button that points to the URL of the article you're going to go to, and you click on the link. So that they can have multiple articles on their web page, only use the +1 button one at a time. And of course, when you get to the individual article, they have a +1 button on it, which of course will inherit the status from the original place you +1'd it. So you're probably thinking, if I had this +1 button, how do I tell if it worked? I mean, for example, I'm going to +1 this person, just because I can. Now, the problem is I need analytics. We don't have real-world analytics. It would be great if I could look that up. But in the meantime, we do have analytics in Webmaster Tools, so you can see how much traffic is coming to your site, what's the CTR, what's the uplift this is caused within your search traffic. We also, if you use Google Analytics, we have the ability to plug it in, and you can basically see uplift within Webmaster Tools and use Google Analytics to drill down even further. And we are continuously expanding and building upon these tools, so they'll get more and more sophisticated as time goes on. So as you can see here, I can see the breakdown by gender, by demographics. Using real-world analytics, I can see that I've +1 one person who's male. Online, we can do more. So we can see where the people came from. And of course, with Google Analytics, you have all of the full power of that analytics tool, including all the usual features for targeting and building goals and doing things like that. So when we talk about upgrading Google, we don't just mean the shiny stuff on the surface. We also are upgrading the deep stuff, things like analytics, the powerful tools people use to make money. So if you want to use this, well, Webmaster Tools, you don't have to do anything. It's already there. For Google Analytics, there's a little bit of code you've got to add, but the analytics documentation will guide you through that, and it's actually a fairly easy process. So what if you want to find out more information about all of this stuff? We are moving all the information about the +1 button onto developers.google.com. Who here has used developers.google.com? Excellent. So we're putting information here, so you have one place you can go to find out how to make your button load faster, how to use it well, and you can, of course, see examples of its usage on our own site. So does anybody have any questions about the +1 button at this point? So the question was, is there any way you can tell if a visitor to your page has already +1 something on that page? Is that correct? So I don't think we have anything at the moment that lets you do that. But what we do have is that with the callback, if the person +1s again, we show you if they are +1ing or +1ing.
Yeah, I know, but it doesn't say that it be like now.
So we don't do that at the moment, correct? We don't have any mechanism. One of the things that's really important to us is that things where the user gives you information are explicit. So that if the user goes to your site and they give you information, that's an explicit step by the user. Nothing magical happens in the background without the user's explicit consent. That's really important to us. So as Chris has pointed out, it's also possible if you have your own registration system, you can use a callback and build something around that.
Yeah, but in that case, it means that only if he plus me in my registration form, not if
Yes, that's correct. So if you already have an existing system, you can hook into that. If you're already using an existing analytics or existing registration system, you can use the +1 callback and feed that in. But we don't have any way for you to track your people who visit your site and indicate if they've +1'd or not. Oops. Another question from the same person.
And one more, using that callback, will I know who is the guy who plus me? So if I will receive his ID and check some information.
So the question is, when you +1 something, does Google tell the publisher who you are? The answer to that is no. We do not do that. Well, one more question.
Okay.
And then somebody else has to ask a question.
I don't know if you can tell it, but when do you plan to launch something like Pages?
So the question is, when do we plan to launch something like Pages? I can tell you that brand Pages will be launching soon. Basically soon. If I were you, I would start preparing my material of what I'm going to do when I have a brand page. Which of my brands will I have pages for? Because I've still got to maintain them. What photos will I have? What content will I put on there? How will I grow my audience? How will I plug it into existing things I'm using? Remember, the point of this is not to build yet another social network. The point of this is to upgrade Google and then to upgrade your experiences on your websites with the data and the tools that Google Plus is building. So I'd start preparing. Okay, oh, different person.
When my friends plus some page, will this page result position improve when I look the result? Or will there be only the list of friends who +1?
So the question is, when my friends +1 a page, does that boost the ranking of the page for me, or does it just annotate it? So it's actually a little more complicated than that. If my friends +1 a page, it will annotate it, but it's only another signal for ranking. Because if my friend +1 something, but it's actually not good content, it shouldn't beat what is already good content. But if you have good content that's not being clicked on because it's not visible, it may be position 10 or position 9 or position 8, seeing the annotations from your friends and then deciding, does that guy actually know anything about photography? And having that little human interaction, that gives you a better experience in search. Because I have friends who +1 stuff, and I'd say, yeah, but he has too much money. I'm not going to believe any recommendations he makes. So because you know your friends, and having that makes the search better. So the question is, if I put a +1 button on every page and all of them point to the home page, is this a good idea or a bad idea? So I would say it's probably a bad idea. So what you're doing is trying to get people to click on the button more. But they can only +1 a URL once. So all that means is they see your homepage, they like your homepage. Great. They see all the other pages you have, and they see a particular page and they want to endorse it. They can't. So you actually lose endorsements as a result. The second thing that happens is that users say, I never +1 that article. Why is it blue? And then they work out that you've deceived them. At which point, they do a +1 and share to the stream and tell people this person is deceiving us. And if you've seen what happens with networks like Plus, they get reshared, and that information becomes widely known. So deceiving users tends to backfire here. It also means it costs you endorsements even if they don't discover it. So it's best to have the +1 button accurately represent what the user is +1ing.
One question that refers to this one. If I give, if I put +1s twice in the page, one somewhere in the header or footer, that means something I like your website, and one inside the content, that means that I like this page. Is it a good idea?
So the question is, is it worth having 2 buttons on the front page of your site, where one is for the home page and one is for a specific article? And is this a good idea? So sometimes it's a good idea. If you have a website where the front page is continuously changing, then letting people +1 the site to say, I like this site, which is what I have in my home page, that's a good idea. Sometimes, though, you also have a river of new content flowing through, and that new content should have +1s attached. And letting people independently endorse those articles is also a good idea. Unfortunately, it depends on the kind of site you have. So you have to think about who your audience is. Will they get confused about having 2 buttons? Or will they say, oh, I see it. And if your design clearly shows this is homepage stuff, say maybe it's in the header, and this is specific article stuff because it's in a specific section of new articles, then that can work. If your design doesn't make that distinction clear enough, it can confuse people. So let's move on to authorship, because we've only got a little bit to cover on authorship. So authorship is driven by one very simple consideration. There are people who are famous. There are people who are considered authorities on topics, and they would like their authority, even their authorité, to be respected. So when they come to web search and they see an article they've written, they ask, why? I'm the world's leading authority on heart surgery. Why doesn't my article reflect that? So we said, is there a way we can do this that's open and fair to all of us? And so what we did was we came up with what we call the authorship initiative, which is basically using the existing XFN. So that's basically a rel equals me, and a special link that says, this article was written by, and I pointed to a profile. And if that profile page points back to that site and says, I write for this site, we now know that you own both ends, which means we can go to the profile page, we can get the image from the profile page, and show it in search. So basically what that means is you can be sure that article was actually written by Britney Spears. So when you're looking up Britney Spears and she's giving you advice on heart surgery, you know she wrote it. So how do you do this yourself? Well, that's easy. Create a Google Plus profile. Enable the +1 tab so people can see your +1s. Then in your link section, you point to the sites that you write for. So if you write for, I don't know, The Guardian or TechCrunch or something like that, you point to their website and you say, I write for this site. And then when articles turn up on that site, they point back to your profile. So you point to TechCrunch. When you write an article, TechCrunch links back to your profile. And they do rel equals author. That's it. It's really that simple. I have a profile. I point to the sites I write for. When I write an article for that, they have a link, and it points back to me. If I have a blog, I point to the blog and say, I write for this blog. Whenever I write a new blog article, I link back to my profile. And now when people search, they see your profile photo next to the articles you have authored. And if you are somebody that the person searching is expected to know is an authority, then you'll show up in search. So, any questions about authorship? Okay, so what do we do next? Oh, wait, we have a question about authorship. So the question is, will it work for brand profiles? So we haven't launched brand profiles yet, and I have a meeting later this week to find out exactly how it will work for brand profiles. But eventually, this will work for brand profiles. the important word there is eventually. So I don't know if it'll work at launch, but it will definitely work eventually because brands author content, they have authority. We are trying to get search and the web to be more like real life, which means you have to, real life includes things that aren't people, but which are connected to people.
Maybe about the brand profiles or pages profiles, it will be some connection between this and Google Places.
So the question is, will there be a connection between brand profiles and Google Places? So at the moment, we don't know. It hasn't been decided, and we're still looking at all the options. If you have ideas or feedback, please tell me. I'll be happy to take the credit. So, next steps. Use the +1 button. By the way, I have stickers. After I finish speaking, come and collect them. Although if you do take the sticker, I will assume you'll use the +1 button. You should look at the rich snippets tool just to see what your pages will look like when they get shared to the stream, what your pages will look like when they show up in search results pages. I think you'll find that improving the quality of that improves click-through rate quite significantly. It also means people are much more likely to share your content in the stream. You can go to Webmaster Tools to find out more about the +1 button, or you can go to the developer site, the google.com site, to find out more if you want to build fancier things on top of this. You can go to schema.org, which is an open website. We can find out about the standards we're using to let people mark up their content on the web, because we believe that if you can structure content on the web, you make search better for everybody. And of course, if you write stuff on the web, claim it. Be an author, have your authority expressed in search. You can find out more information there. And of course, if you're looking for general Google Plus APIs, you can either go to Jonathan's talk, which is on next, or you can go to Chris Chabot's talk afterwards, which talks about the Google Plus public data APIs. And we've been shipping new functionality in these APIs roughly every 2 to 3 weeks. There's new stuff coming out very soon that you'll be quite excited about. But we're always launching new stuff. It all uses the same technology, and it's all just as easy to use, and we're focused just as often on solving real problems for real people. So, finally, I just want to say, we've been out now. The Google Plus project launched about 110, 115 days ago. We have about 40 million users. I think it's 5 billion impressions of the +1 button a day, 3.4, 3.5 billion photos uploaded to Google Plus since then. We've only just started. There's a lot more stuff to come, and we'd love to have you join us. Thank you. So we have a little time left. We have 8 minutes, during which people can come up with stickers or ask questions.
I would like to ask about the usage of the button, because I know that people are quite lazy, and if you look at the Wikipedia, only 10% are making the content and 90% are just reading. Do you think that it will change with the button, that more people will get involved in?
So the question is, will people actually engage sufficiently to use the button? And he quoted the Wikipedia article, the 1% rule. So the funny thing about the 1% rule is that the person who originally wrote the article about the 1% rule is a guy called Bradley Horowitz. He's a VP on Google+. We are very aware of this issue. If you look at what we've done, the +1 button is a very lightweight gesture. It's a very easy way of saying, yeah, this is cool. And saying, yeah, this is cool, and these people should know about it. And we've seen really quite impressive engagement. It's sprung up all over the web. It makes sharing easy. It makes sharing not only easy, but safe. Because there are things I would like my friends to know about, but I wouldn't like my boss to know about. Just like, we're not always the same person in the same context. You want to sort of say, I want to talk about football here, but I want to talk about computers here. And so the +1 button does give us that. And I think that if you look at the usage, where you've got very impressive usage of something so young, and the value people are getting is so tangible that I think we're going to see significant usage in the years to come.
So you mentioned that you're getting like 3.5 billion views of the +1 button.
5 billion a day.
5 billion. So how many clicks?
I don't know, actually. But I think if you watch our quarterly earnings, that's when those kinds of numbers will be put out. It's a little bit sensitive at the moment, but yes, I don't know.
Say it was a big play. If I just make some like authorship or something, and then in the future later on I decide to cancel this link from my profile, that Google will still store this like relation.
So the question is, if I have an authorship link to a site and then I cancel that link, will Google still store this link? That's a good question. So I'm going to hand these stickers out so people can take a couple and pass them on to other people. I thought I'd crowdsource that. So the challenge is going to be when we recrawl that content. We're going to respect the fact we've broken the link, but that can take a while. So it's not deterministic, but it's one of the things we are going to take into account. But it's very, very early, and we haven't got enough people yet to see what's actually the right thing to do is. But we expect that we will honor the fact that you've broken the link and you say, I didn't write any of the content there. But I'm not sure what we're doing now. So the question is, when will Google Plus be available for Google Apps accounts, and why isn't it available yet? So the reason it isn't available yet is that it's hard. The team that's working on this, they have pretty much everybody in Google wandering by their desk on a regular basis and saying, when can I use this in my Google Apps account? And they say, soon. And then the next Googler walks by and asks the same question. They say, soon. So we are working on it. It will be available soon. But I can point out that I've seen it. It is coming. If there are no more, oh wait, do we have one more question?
I'm just wondering about my first question about if I can get the information from the guy who plus one. If I remember it right, there is some possibility to authorize website using or authorize user using some API on Google Plus now, and so if it's possible to make it that people authorize enable Google Plus.
So the question is, can I find out who a person visiting my site is if they choose to give me that information using the Google Plus public data APIs? And the answer is yes. If the user chooses to give you that information, you can build that functionality. And if you go to Chris Chabot's talk, which is in an hour's time, he will show you exactly how to do that. But the important thing here is that the user explicitly chose to give you that information. So thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next year.